everybody. Well, pleased to see you all. As Liz said, I'm now in Chicago. I'll be here for the next few months. And yes, it is still 6:02 in the morning here, so still feeling a bit sleepy. But anyway, we'll kick off. I'm joined today by Naomi. Hi, Naomi.
Hello, everyone.
And also by Liz. Hi, Liz.
Hi, everyone.
And Gareth as well. Hi, Gareth. Gareth's just sorting out his mic. Do you need to unmute, Gareth, Nick?
No, I have problem. Is that working?
Can you hear? That's fine. Hi, Gareth.
Great. Okay. Yeah, I have problems with Teams generally. It's my 5th account I've tried to get in with.
Laura is on holiday today, and I'm not too certain about Kevin. Kevin was at Silverstone yesterday, volunteering for the racing. Well, marshalling, I think, rather than actually racing. But anyway, let's kick off. I'm not going to do the statistics this week. And of course, if anybody wants to join in, just raise your hand and you can, we'll open the line and you can join in the conversation. So we were going to do the business rates. If Kevin turns up, I'll get Kevin to do the business rates then. And I'm not going to do the statistics this week because Steve, who normally produces his statistics, is also on holiday this week and so hasn't updated the statistics. We did have a look at them last week on the benefits briefing, and they were still pretty much as we would kind of expect. I think over the next few weeks will be more interesting to see whether they go up or whether they go down. So let's start today's discussion with Freedom Day. Go there, Nick.
Oh, God.
I understand this is how we're supposed to be celebrating Freedom Day.
Are those the Mexican Day of the Dead fireworks, Mark?
Very good, yes, should be, shouldn't they? So I thought we'd start off with a cheery look at the track and trace figures, because track and trace hasn't gone away from local authorities to do. I won't go through all of these in detail, you can see them there, but the track and trace figures don't look particularly rosy at the moment. 194,005 people tested positive. That was just between the 1st and the 7th of July. It was the highest week since the 27th of January. 5,473,208 people were tested at least once between the 1st of July and the 7th of July. It's an awful lot of people, and an increase of 5% against also 43% being tested positive. We had a record 520,194 people in England being alerted by the app. And BBC Analysis has found that they think as many as 4.5 million people in the UK could be instructed to self-isolate by the test and trace system between mid-July and the policy change on the 16th of August. And the British Medical Journal say that the ratio at the moment is 1 to 36 to 1 to 58 for you getting pinged. So for every one person, 36 people will be pinged by the app. So it's all good news. What do we think about this? Gareth, is this good news for local authorities, do you think?
I think it's good news for anybody. We're still feeling slightly kind of smug in Wales because we're not unlocking in the same way that England is doing, and the numbers do look a bit better here than they do in England. I think the problem's going to come, of course, when you start looking at the people who've been pinged and then locked down and what their benefit situation is going to be. Particularly given that we're going to see the ending of furlough, the ending of the £20 uplift, and the ending of the MIF relief and so forth, all coming in the next few weeks.
Yes, let's go to the next slide, Nick. And hi, Kevin. So you've joined us.
Hello there, Malcolm. Sorry, I got waylaid with another meeting, but back here now.
Okay, we'll do the business update in a minute. So Freedom Day. That's a picture of some people that are self-isolating have been pinged. Don't know who they are, just random people off the internet somewhere. But what does this all mean for us in terms of revenues and benefits? Are you all opening up and caseloads collections, are they going to go up, down? And where are you and your staff working today, or are you self-isolating? So, Kevin, what's it like in mid-Sussex?
Our numbers are increasing in respect of people positive and people getting pinged. I can't think who else has been pinged. Obviously, I've spent a weekend mingling with 350,000 people. So that could be fascinating as well. But certainly for our area, I think we can all make judgments of whether Freedom Day should be now or whether it should be later. But we are where we are, aren't we? And I think the true impact of this will come later on when we find out about when job furlough and the impact of job furlough and things like that, and businesses, etc., and the impact on them.
Yeah, what about in Cambridge, Naomi? Are you seeing staff being pinged? Are you able to open a service? Is your offices open?
We've started to open our customer service centre over the last sort of few weeks, encouraging officers to go into the office, really not so much. And that is just going to be a very slow process. And, you know, if officers want to work from home and their work rate and capacity for change is still there, why would you ask them to come into the office? On a sort of work perspective, yeah, our recovery is really starting to get back into a normal cycle of reminders, finals, court dates, although obtaining court dates is a real nightmare for us. And it's not at our local Cambridge Magistrates Court either. It's over at Huntingdon. So I think that could be a bit of an issue brewing. On the benefits side, council tax reduction, still strong, still similar caseload. Our scheme has served us very well. It's highly automated, or as much as we think we can do for universal credit people, so that's helpful for us. You know, we've been looking at our HB reduction over the last sort of couple of years and projected where we'd be. We're not there. We've not lost as many cases as we ever thought that we would have done, which is good. That, you know, very vulnerable people are still being supported with things and benefit. But from, you know, managing the benefit team, it's all hands to the pump. Self-isolation payments are going through the roof. We've had a restructure, and although the caseload's not dropping, the number of changes is starting to creep up a lot. You know, looking at self-employed cases, looking at earnings changing quite a lot, and we're now sort of slap bang into holiday season. So it's going to be a bit of a rough ride from the team's perspective for a few weeks as well.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of imagine that it is going to be fairly a lot of churn. Would you say that, Liz, as well? You'd be expecting to see a lot of churn in caseloads and also in resources.
Yeah, well, I think, yes, change of circumstances definitely are going to have an impact. On relation to, I know it's not in here, but opening up, I think people would be crazy to open up, actually. particularly given the volatile situation that we're in. I think the main danger coming, well, my own opinion is the main danger coming along the line is the fact that we may just end furlough and then we may have another shutdown.
So let me ask you all about shutdown as well. There was a bit in Public Finance magazine today talking from Kent County Council, who were basically saying that if we went into another lockdown, that would increase their budget gap considerably by about tenfold. So they didn't seem to be keen on the idea of opening up only to have to lock down later. Is that a real financial risk? I mean, Kevin, you're a bit of a money man. Kevin, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. I personally think, yeah, there's a potential money risk, yes, but do we know enough about? We're in uncharted waters here. A lot of people are getting pinged. A lot of people are testing positive. Is luckily the younger generation, but I just don't think we know, because we've never been in these circumstances in the last 100 years, and certainly not in the modern environment, what the true impact is going to be, both individual or on local authorities.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, there has to be a certain amount of accounting, doesn't there, in advance? I assume that Ken hasn't raised this purely because they think that it's not an issue. I mean, they formed 3 scenarios, and going back to lockdown was their fearful one. What do you think, Gareth? And I know that Lynn has also put her hand up. Gareth?
I just don't know. I mean, I think Kevin says, you know, we don't know what will happen. It's a bit Rumsfeld-like, isn't it? It's the unknown unknown. We don't know who's going to get pinged, what they're going to choose to do, and what the effect of the increased intermingling of people post the lockdown is going to mean in those numbers.
Do we think, I mean, Naomi, do we think that there is a risk of a further lockdown?
Yes.
Well, I think that there is risk of some sort of restrictions coming in the autumn, winter. Whether it will ever constitute a lockdown, because politically, I think the government would be very, very fearful of such a situation, but they can't just let it. They can't let the prevalence of coronavirus be business as usual without either having some restrictions and or ensuring that local authorities have the finances at their disposal to cope with them, and also the NHS to be able to cope with it. COVID as business as usual is a very risky strategy, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's the opinion actually of the whole world, isn't it? I mean, everybody is looking at us at the moment. Well, no, well, I leave that aside, but everybody's looking at us at the moment to see what the impact of this so-called Freedom Day and general lifting of restrictions will have. What happens if, I mean, I think the only thing that the government will worry about is actually if hospital admissions and people becoming very much iller and they increase. But they don't give a damn really about public finances, do they, in terms of local authorities? That won't be a driver. That's what I'm trying to say. The driver will be whether hospital admissions start to go up and whether we have more people in hospital. And I appreciate, of course, the NHS is public finance, but you know where I'm going as far as our small niche area is. I think that won't be an issue, even if it is an issue.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, I guess probably the only comment I'd make about lifting lockdown is, having been in Mexico, where quite clearly the circumstances were different. I mean, there was very little in the way of social distancing going on in Mexico, but everybody wore a mask, no matter whether you were old, young, or whatever. But society had largely opened up. The bars were open, the restaurants were open, people were packed in, you know, all the usual stuff, you know, murder, mayhem going on in the streets, all carried on, but people were wearing masks. Here in Chicago, it seems different again. Society seems to have opened up, and if you've been double jabbed, you don't have to wear a mask. But it is causing some tensions. You can see that even here between the mask wearers and the non-mask wearers and everything else. So, you know, it's not just the UK, I guess, that's probably in this kind of odd situation. Anyway, shall we move on? Nick, can we move on the slides? Can we go to the business rates? Kevin, please.
Yes, Malcolm. Once again, apologies for being slightly delayed today. Basically, business rates, the business grants, we should still be tidying up business grants and getting some payments out. So for the restart grants, that closes on the grants closed on 30th of June, and by the 31st of July, you should have dealt with everything and closed it all off. And there will be a reconciliation process to do, of course. They seem to be doing them a lot. The additional restrictions grant, you have your top up. We've, in the process of spending all our money, we closed our scheme round 5 on the 30th of June. We won't be reopening again. There's no more money even to the 19th of July and Freedom Day, as we've just mentioned. On the additional restrictions grant, we are insisting on an application because of the cash cap. We are down in the number of people applying, whether it's ignorance or whether it's I don't want to complete a form for fraud, I don't know, but we are down in the numbers applying. Please note, for the payment holiday, we just award it automatically if we think they're qualified. We do make them go through an application process now. The 1.5 billion package of reliefs is in the reading stage now through the House of Parliament. I suspect it will not get done before the summer recess. It will be in the autumn winter. You'd be expected to do your various schemes and set a discretionary scheme, probably with elected member input. It could be, it might not even be operational until 22-23. Of course, with the revaluation taking place from April 23, it will probably be taken into account in that anyway. Business rate isn't slowing down, probably business grants tidying up, and we do have to keep our business grants records for 10 years. I worry about that. Thank you, Malcolm.
Okay, Kevin, do you think that there will be eventually a crackdown on those that have received grants in terms of looking for things like fraud and anomalies?
Absolutely. I think by the time, and the grants, whilst it's big money to local authorities, is not big money and what's being paid out. You look at job furlough and whether businesses have met the criteria, whether people have met the criteria, I think the government will be looking to get some of the money back big time. I think fraud will really take off. The trouble is they haven't got the resources in central government to tackle it. So they need local authorities' help. If local authority does get involved, are they going to get repaid through it through new burdens funding? There's a whole load of answers because we need the beef from the government to enable us to challenge it.
Yeah, and Gareth, do you think that the government will look to start to recover money back from wherever it can in probably from the next budget? Yeah, Gareth, you're muted.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if there wasn't a real emphasis over the next years in terms of trying to recover anything which was overpaid, I suppose. I mean, the fraudsters probably won't get caught on that, but the people that made innocent mistakes and so forth will find themselves put under unexpected pressures again, because things like the SICE grants are being audited much more seriously now, I think, than the first couple of rounds of them. And the same will go for the people that have been running furlough schemes. I'll just put something in the chat, by the way, if I can, Malcolm. We just put a free 5th round SICE grant calculator that might be useful for people looking at that. So I'll just that into the chat.
That's fine. Be able to see that and grab that link. If anybody can't grab the link for some reason, if they let either myself or Gareth know, we'll make certain the link gets to you. And I'll include it in the when I distribute the slides later on. Okay, let's have a quick trip through second homes. This meeting's talked about this for a couple of weeks now. This is a bit of a controversial area, I think. You know, some people will say that the underlying reason for Britain's housing crisis is not the lack of supply. Others suggest it's because greed has been allowed to displace need. And the question is how big would our housing crisis be if it was not for second homes? Are second homes close to your heart, Kevin?
I would say for us, second homes is not the issue. It may be in other sort of coastal areas. Having said that, we do have issues with coastal areas, with second homes, particularly as the new rules on the amount of council tax charge come in respect of the charges, which at a time when people are struggling financially doesn't always augur well. We do work closely as a service with our housing department, and we've been quite successful in getting houses back into use. But I still think it's touching the surface.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Nick, can you go on to the next slide and probably bring Liz in? It's a question I think that's hovering around almost no one in public life seems to want to ask, let alone answer. So by a second home, we don't really mean one that's continuously rented to another household. We mean a property used either as a personal holiday home or as a place to stay while working away from your main home. In other words, it's a luxury that deprives other people of a necessity. Is that how you would describe it, Liz?
I think that's a bit overblown, actually.
Okay,
I do. It's one of those. We wouldn't probably be worrying about this if we weren't in the middle of a housing crisis, obviously.
Yeah.
But the freedoms of, personal freedoms exist, which allow people who can afford it to buy another property. I mean, second homes, the ones I find probably most contentious are, basically properties that are owned from abroad. And you can't deny I suppose they probably don't class exactly as second homes because the person hasn't got a home probably here, or may have, who knows?
It depends what you define as abroad there.
Yes, I'm not talking Wales.
The second homes issue in Wales has been a huge one.
Probably, and always has been.
Yeah, and it's a real social issue. I mean, there are areas, the nice bits where there is absolutely no hope for people on average wages in the local area being able to afford a house. And 70 or 80% of houses in villages are empty for 90% of the year, which means that the local shops and the schools and all the kind of the social services are placed in a completely unworkable position.
A long time ago, sorry, Gareth. A long time ago, there was an issue, wasn't there? A political issue, or more a protest issue, with people burning second homes. That was Wales, wasn't it?
It's beth am gynnau tân fel y tân yn llun, as an old Welsh song had about it. It wasn't a huge number of events, but it certainly, has remained an enormous political and cultural issue. And yeah, I mean, a very small minority went to the kind of the extremes there, but the vast majority of people, certainly in those areas, really want to see the number of second homes reduced for a whole pile of reasons.
I only mentioned it because I think it's illustrative of the fact that this has been a long-term problem for Wales, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because this was some years ago.
Yeah. It's been a long-term problem for a lot of rural areas as well. I mean, not just Wales. I mean, it's a long time ago since the last cottage was burned down, wasn't it, in Wales, probably back in the 1980s.
Yes, yeah.
But certainly for rural areas, it is does seem to be a bit of a challenge. Can we go to the next slide, please, Nick?
And
so before the pandemic, the figures showed that there were 772,000 households in England had second homes, but interestingly, since COVID and Brexit, growing realisation that you can monetize your second home by putting it on Airbnb when you're not using it has triggered new business opportunities. So if you rent yours out as a furnished holiday let part of the year, it should be available for 210 days. It needs to be let for only 105 days. And as Kevin said earlier, you no longer have to pay council tax, but you can register it instead as a business rate payer. And then you can apply for 100% small business rate relief, cancelling the entire bill. That changes the whole focus, does it not, Kevin, around how second homes operate?
It is, but how easy it is to do this is another matter.
Are you saying it's not easy to do it?
I think it's going to get tougher.
Yeah. Naomi, would you think it's going to get tougher as well?
I think this is a very difficult subject. I think that in certain areas of the country, it will be regarded as a different issue to others. I think the example that you've put here, where a homeowner is neither paying council tax nor business rates, will really incense the local community.
Yeah, I mean, that's been probably some of the big changes in this. Nick, can we have the next slide, please? So once you've got it as a business, that reopens it up to all the other grants and stuff, doesn't it? Kevin, have you had many come in or seen many like this?
I would say on this, well, our restart grants is about 70% take up, but yeah, some would qualify, but we don't have such an issue as Naomi said that other areas will have.
Yeah, and you've also got the stamp duty holiday, which brings up to £15,000 there. I mean,
the stamp duty has been an issue because obviously for us we've had a lot of new properties, and so we're one of 41 authorities that had a surplus collection fund for council tax. So yes, the stamp duty has brought a huge benefit windfall to us.
Okay, and Gareth, I mean, this next 2 points about the coast and scenic areas inland, local people report buying a home as becoming impossible, which is what you said earlier, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a really, really huge problem. I mean, if you think of some of the areas, I mean, like Gwynedd, which is an enormous Greek council area with a lot of, really quite unattractive inland areas within it. Over 10% of all the properties are second homes now. And that's why Welsh Government is doing a really big kind of policy drive on what to do. I mean, we have a council tax premium on second homes in Wales up to 100%. So, there is an attempt to do some kind of nudging by use of taxation as well. But there are very strong proposals to introduce a licensing system for second homes.
In Wales?
In Wales, yes. Yeah. There's a report this year out from Welsh Government that puts that in as one of the major recommendations to create a licensing regime.
And do we think that such a scheme is likely to be duplicated in England or Scotland? I mean, I can see Scotland doing much the same in some areas, but I would have thought probably England.
I think England's unlikely to do it, partly because of the fact that you don't have the powers regionally to do that kind of thing. And secondly, because, of course, the huge majority of the second home owners are English. So
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
this is
And
like
in government.
Can we go to the next slide, please, Nick? So Gareth, you've been talking about community depth there. I noted some of these. The survey in Devon in June found villages with between 2/3 and 95% of properties are second home. There's a village in Pembrokeshire where there are 3 remaining residents. Cornwall in May, there was more than 10,000 properties listed on Airbnb for holidaymakers, but just 62 offered on Rightmove for rent to permanent residents. And in New Quay, more than 500 people are reckoned to be homeless. So those figures they've kind of cracked along, haven't they? I mean, we kind of didn't see this as probably a growing social issue, and now all of a sudden it is. I mean, I'll take Liz's point that it was always questionable back in the 1980s. But
I think the Airbnb bit's a bit different because that does at least bring some economic benefits to the area. It's the places that are empty, and in Wales particularly because of the language issue, it's the real kind of social and community impact. When I have some friends in a village in Carmarthenshire, and there was a huge row a few years ago because one family sort of moved in for 4 months of the year and sent their kids to the local school while they were there, and then immediately launched a campaign because the school's language was Welsh. And they said that was outrageous and discriminatory, and they had to turn the whole school language into English. And it didn't succeed, but it created an enormous amount of row and expense.
yeah, so I mean, it does seem an issue. Is anybody else on the call? Are you in an area which is causing this kind of issue? And do we think it's going to get wider? Because I'm thinking, I live in Wetherby, which is just outside of Leeds, and we can start to see some of these problems starting to fall, even in Wetherby. Liz, Nick, somebody's just raised their hand. Could you open the line?
Yeah, I'm in Torbay, which you might know as Torquay, Paignton and Brixham. So we have seen a rise in evictions due to the pandemic for second homeowners who have got long-term tenants in them wanting to cash in on the staycation. So we've seen an increase in the people on trying to find new accommodation because of the pandemic. So you've got my neighbours are one prime example, long-term tenant, been in there 4 years, received their eviction notice, and it's now open to Airbnb.
Yeah, so that kind of thing must be going on right across the country. I mean, you can't blame people, can you, Liz, if they see a business opportunity that suddenly exists, and then it does change a community like Torbay, doesn't it?
No, you can't blame people. I must admit, I think that statistic about Pembrokeshire, there are only 3 remaining residents, is really, really shocking. It does sort of bring it home, but it's absolutely right that there are different problems in different areas, aren't there? Here where I live, I mean, this is never likely to happen because people are quite happy to get out of London, and most properties that come on the market, there's no, I mean, it's quite a rural area, but it's too close to London, I think, to become anything other than, just absolutely a commuter belt where people want to move out of London and there is property to buy. They can afford it, so they do. It's perhaps not so much an issue
You're
here.
in Newbury, aren't you? So
I am in Newbury, yes.
but just for everybody else.
Yes, sorry, yes, I know. Yes, and of course there's a huge lot of building going on, but they're mostly flats. 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom at most. There's a huge development that's just started by the station, which is being called the Gateway to Newbury. Well, frankly, it looks like a fortress to Newbury to me, but still, And I question whether that's the right strategy now, because people who possibly moving out of London, because of the fact, I'm sure I've been through this before, but because of the fact that it's people are going to, whatever we say, are going to be working more from home. Is this strategy right? Because people are mostly wanting to move out if they're working from home to larger properties, not just little commuter boxes.
Yeah, and I mean your workplace. I mean, presumably Reading is one of the biggest influences for you. Was Reading about 20 minutes down the railway line, and then it's what, another 30 minutes into London, isn't it?
Yeah, so from here it's about 45 minutes, and then I suppose we've got I can't remember what they're calling it now, Crossrail or something else, but I mean that will start from Reading, so effectively you will be able to get all the way from Reading into Essex in one journey, stopping off at the city on the way. So
right.
But actually, again, going back to that, how relevant is this going to be in future if we do work from home?
Well, it's about the changing face of communities and the fact that we've already got a housing crisis, and none of this has gone any way to resolving, but gone quite a long way to exacerbating the housing crisis. I guess that's probably the question, isn't it, Gareth?
Yes, I mean, I think more people being able to work from home is already seeing people leaving the cities permanently, effectively, certainly where they've got control themselves of when and how they work. And that's a global thing. In Italy, I know that a lot of the kind of previously very much abandoned hilltop villages are starting to come back to life as people have moved out of the cities because of the real problems in Italian cities that are going on. And Italy has put really fast fibre into all of its rural areas, which makes that kind of thing very feasible.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It is. I mean, particularly across Europe, I think as well. There's lots of similarities. Okay, Nick, can we just go to the next slide, which hopefully I think is the end. Yeah. Okay, because I noticed that we've overrun a bit. It's been an interesting conversation. Thank you all very much for coming along. Can I thank my panel? Can I thank Gareth and Kevin, Liz and Naomi? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and we're back again next week, and I look forward to seeing you all then. Don't forget you can get the previous episodes and this one as well when we've uploaded it. We'll go onto YouTube, and I'll send around a note with the links and the link to Gareth's calculator as well. Okay, thank you all very much, and see you all next week.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.